Here we go. So hi, this is Dan Cerrucci. We're back again with a little Zoom chat here with the Dan Cerrucci blog and on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else. And I've got one of my favorite people with me, New Jersey State Senator Joe Pennacchio. Senator Pennacchio, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing fine today. And Senator, you know, this is a big week for Republicans, and you are the co-chair of the Trump campaign in New Jersey. Quite a big honor. I guess you're sort of disappointed you're not down at the convention this week, huh?
I am disappointed. I think this is the first convention, the last 4 or 5 that I've missed. We were elected to be a delegate, but you know, it is what it is. So I guess safety first, Dan.
You know, Senator, for those of us who are political junkies, the quadrennial political convention is sort of like the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Indy 500, and the Kentucky Derby all rolled into one, isn't it, though?
It's also a lot of fun. Obviously, you have thousands of people, like-minded people, and we're all there for the same reason, and we're all there to get Donald Trump reelected, but at the same time, we're going to have fun doing it.
And you were one of the first people in New Jersey to come out for Donald Trump right from the beginning. What motivated you to do that, Senator?
Well, I looked at the field, and what impressed me most about Donald Trump, Dan, was that he had a populist message. He wanted to put America and America's interests first. We can't be all things to all people. We can't help other nations unless we have our own house in order. So before we put other countries ahead of ourselves, I think we should put ourselves first on the top of that list. That's why his message was so appealing to me, Dan.
A very, very powerful message, but a lot of people didn't see how incredibly it would resonate at that time. So you certainly had a degree of foresight, and I'm guessing it was also partly your own instincts. You came to politics. I mean, you didn't enter politics as a professional politician. You came from another profession. What motivated you? I've always wanted to ask to get involved in politics in the first place.
Well, it's a long story, but I'll give you the condensed version. I grew up a Democrat in a Democrat household, very apolitical. But you know, Democrats were for people, Republicans were for business people. I remember seeing John Kennedy on television. I remember seeing his brother Bobby on television. Cried for both as a young person when they were both assassinated. But what I liked most about them, and I started feeling that again with Ronald Reagan, is that they inspired people. You saw crowds of people gather around them. They would follow them. They would actually be intent and listen to the message that they were saying. So that type of politics stands like an opiate. It gets in your blood, and once it gets in, it never left me. Growing up, the only thing I ever wanted to be was mayor of New York City. But I went to dental school. I graduated as a dentist. I decided to open up a practice in New Jersey. And I think there was a residency requirement for being mayor of New York, and I couldn't do that from New Jersey.
And you certainly became a real Jersey guy. And I got to admire your moxie, okay? The oomph that you bring to the job. And today, you decided to skip the governor's budget address. Now, for people that may not be aware of this, in New Jersey, the governor's budget address is sort of a big deal. It's right up there, I guess, with the State of the State address, but they're separated into 2 different speeches in New Jersey. So the governor decided he was going to put the budget address at Rutgers Stadium, which holds, I don't know, like something like 50,000 people, correct me if I'm wrong, and a couple of 100 legislators were supposed to be there and sit down and watch the governor's address. And you, as a Republican state senator, and you may have been the only one who did this, decided, well, I'm not going. Tell us why.
Well, first of all, I did go. The governor's budget address was done in March, and I was there when he gave his budget address, and that's for next year's budget. And he decided to have another budget address because now we have a 9-month budget, not a 12-month budget. The other budget was extended. By the way, when he extended the 2020 budget, there was no additional address. So now he wants to extend the 2021 budget, and it's all for political theater. And I refuse to be a legislative prop for this governor, especially when he's going to put that budget on a credit card, and he's going to give my kids and my grandchildren the bill.
This is the funny thing, Senator, because a lot of the news stories that I'm following today are reporting it as if it is the governor's budget address when he already gave a budget address, and he's the first governor, I guess, that anyone can remember, I don't know, that is giving two budget addresses in the same year. Is that
same budget? But there was no additional budget address for the extra extension of the budget that we did from 2020. This guy is making it up as goes along, Dan. Okay, and quite frankly, same governor that caused you to take an 8-hour commute, have an 8-hour commute for a 6-inch snowstorm, now is in charge of the pandemic for the state of New Jersey. It's scary.
I read a report that the Secretary of Health, that she really doesn't have a lot of communication with the governor. She's supposed to be sort of overseeing this whole COVID response. And there was a report at one point she even threatened to resign because she herself didn't know what the hell was going on.
Well, it's the Commissioner of Health. She publicly stated, this is going back a number of months ago, I don't know if they rectified the situation, but during this crisis, this pandemic, that they shut the state down, she had said publicly she and the governor had never had a one-on-one meeting. Incredible. Then you had a number of whistleblowers from the Department of Health saying, we don't know where the governor's getting or how the governor's making his decisions. What is the data and the science that he's applying it to? Well, welcome to the club. Neither do I, and neither do most of New Jersey know why this governor is sort of doing, why he's doing, and what he's basing it on. Keep in mind, we were supposed to be isolated and shut down for a couple of weeks to flatten the curve.
Right. 5
months later, this man is still ruling us. He's not governing us. He's ruling us with these edicts, arbitrary in my opinion. And we have a Democrat legislature that's just on the sidelines, behaving like nice little puppies that they are.
Now, Senator, I share, and I think countless numbers of New Jerseyans share your frustration and even rage over this. Okay, that restaurants aren't open, even at very limited capacity. We can't go inside a restaurant. We're sitting outside in the oppressive heat. Okay, it's a whole big deal to try to get a meal. It's a ridiculous situation. But some people feel that none of the Republicans should have attended the so-called budget address, the phony budget address today. I mean, why were they there? I mean, why didn't they just all follow your lead and skip it?
I can't speak for my colleagues, but I can tell you en masse, I'm very proud of my Republican colleagues in the caucus. We've been up there front and center, and I haven't seen this in 20 years. Us being a cohesive branch group of Republicans, speaking out on all sorts of issues, whether it's picking winners and losers, or whether it's challenging this legislature to do the right thing and get a special select committee to investigate this governor and how his policies helped kill 7,000 people. Republicans en masse, unified, talking and encouraging these issues. So, today was a speech. I don't know who else decided to come or not to show up. But again, to me, this was just political theater. It's a waste of people's time. I actually spent the most of my day in my office dealing with constituents' concerns. We still don't have the unemployment issues figured out. DMV, the lines of DMV are still around the block. That's okay, but you can't vote in person. It's okay to have those DMV lines around the block.
I cannot understand. You see these pictures of lines at the DNC, people sitting out in lawn chairs. They have to bring fresh water with them, something to eat, whatever, nourishment. They've got umbrellas over them, or they're sitting out there for hours. I don't know how the people of New Jersey are putting up with it. Now, the Republican Party did go to court to try to challenge. They went to the state Supreme Court to challenge the governor's cockamamie borrowing scheme, which was rather unprecedented. Were you surprised at the Supreme Court decision to let him go ahead with it?
No, what surprised me is the cowards that they were. That wasn't a 7-0 decision. I doubt it. Normally what happens is a split decision. But in order for them to show that they're unified in their decision and maybe not to embarrass any of themselves, it always seems to me like an always 7-0 decision. That's not fair. You took an oath, and the oath, at least if you're going to come out with an opinion, at least be able to back your opinion. If you agree, say so. If you disagree, we'd like to know that there are people that don't, that are not rubber stamping whatever is going on in the Supreme Court, and to hide behind a cowardly 7-0 decision. I don't think they did the people of New Jersey a service. Not the first time, and unfortunately, it's not going to be the last time.
I found it hard to believe. I had to really read through to see that. By the way, it wasn't widely reported in the news reports, not the ones that I saw anyway. That I saw it was a 7-0 decision. I said, "What the hell was this all about?" Because aren't most of the current justices of the Supreme Court, weren't most of them appointed by Republican governor?
Four by Christie, one by the former Republican Christine Todd Whitman.
Okay, so that's most of them.
Well, it's 5 out of 7. My math serves me correct. That's most of them.
So that's another thing I'm never quite able to understand. I call those kinds of Republicans, Senator, I call them country club Republicans. They're grit your teeth and clutch your pearl Republicans and lose gracefully. Is that too harsh, Senator?
They're elitists as far as they're elitist, and we should be thankful that we allow them
as too docile.
Well, we should be thankful that we allow them to rule over us. That us plebeians, that they can, with all their smarts and all their intelligence and all their pedigree, we gave them the opportunity for us poor people down here. And to me, it's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful that I'm angry at myself. I'm angry that some of these people I supported, I campaigned for, even though I thoroughly disagreed with a number of the issues that they were espousing. But I held my nose, and I still worked because they were Republicans. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem that works both ways, does it, Dan?
No, it doesn't always work both ways. And those of us who are more conservative are well aware of that. And thank God for Donald Trump for championing populist conservatives like us, because that's something that we haven't had in a long time, and in fact for even in sort of inventing this movement. Now it seems that what the governor has proposed today, as best as I can understand it, he's going to borrow a lot of money, he's going to raise a lot of taxes, various taxes that he's proposed raising, and assessments and fees and so forth. He's going to pile up more money than he needs, because the tax revenues really that we've been getting have not really fallen that much, okay? We don't seem to be in the dire economic straits that he said we were. And then he's going to come out of this with a surplus that he's going to be able to boast about as he goes into an election. Is this the scenario? Am I reading this right, Senator? Of what he's saying?
Very
shenanigans?
Very correct. It's a political budget. It's designed for him to give enough cash. That way he has his Christmas wish list for next year when he runs. The budget itself, they're saying they want to borrow $4 billion, and yet they're claiming they're going to have a $2 billion budget surplus. This is crazy. The way I would have done it, I would have said, I'll have a zero surplus, but I have the ability to borrow $4 billion. Towards the end of the budget cycle, if the economy hasn't picked up and we have to do the minimum amount of borrowing, then at least we'll be safe and we'll have it on the sidelines. He's putting almost a $5 billion payment into the pension system. Now, everybody agrees that the pension system should be funded, but I'm not saying don't fund it, but perhaps you can stretch out some of that funding during these emergency times, and instead of doing it in 12 months, maybe doing it in 18 months with the idea that you'll make up the difference, not put any less in, but just take a little bit longer time to do it. We have Senator Orho's mentioned that with all these people now that are working from home and claim New York City as their place of employment, we can actually recoup, I've heard estimates of almost $1 billion if we don't give them the tax credit, because they pay New York City tax credit, New York City income taxes, and we usually give it to them as a credit. So, claiming almost $350 million of Medicaid savings, when that's nonsense, because that was paid for by the federal government through the CARES Act, leaving $2 billion right now, as I see it, of care money not spent on the table. Again, think of that 8-hour commute for that 6-inch snowstorm, okay? And it should not surprise you what's going on with this pandemic, and it should not surprise you what's going on with this budget. Then you throw the toxic mix of an election year and politics into it, where all my friends on the other side of the aisle, they're all circling the wagons. And the reason they're circling the wagons is because they want that money. They may not be lockstep with this governor on all issues, but they want that money because they know money's going to be the mother's milk for them to get themselves reelected again next year. And the ones who wind up suffering, by the time this debt is paid off, I'm going to be pushing daisies. That bill is going to be given to our children and their grandchildren. So you're going to be paying on the $4 billion, if you borrow in entirety, you're going to be paying, oh my goodness, $50–60 billion on that.
And he didn't even spend very much of what he got from the federal government for the COVID emergency.
There's still $2 billion left on the table. Still haven't figured out how he's spending that.
So I'm thinking that he's going to be able to boast next year as he goes into election year, which would be November of 21. Hey, everybody, look how fiscally responsible we've been in New Jersey. We got a budget surplus. It's amazing that what we've managed to accomplish here. And then if he gets reelected, then it's, Katie bar the door, the money starts to flow like crazy to all of their favored causes of the Democrats, and basically redistribution of the wealth. I mean, is this a crazy scenario?
It's cowardly also, because instead of saying we're going to start paying it off right away, they're going to take 35 years to pay off the debt. And then they're going to take the first 3 years because the CARES helped to incentivize them if there was any borrowing to help them. It was sort of cost for borrowing that $4 billion is minimus the first 3 years. After 3 years, then it jacks up. It's not the way. It's not the way to govern. It's not being fiscally prudent. It's not fair that you have to give future generations the bill for operating expenses. It's basically putting your rent on a credit card.
And the Republicans haven't really been brought into the process with all this. I mean, have you been part of this whole process?
Well, I think there's a terrific group of Republican senators on the Senate Budget Committee. And I think they work closely with Paul Solo, the chairman. They do the best they can, but ultimately, remember, the governor has the veto power. He's a very powerful governor. So, and using they can be bored is pretty strong language, but politically things can happen where if you disagree with an element of the budget, perhaps you can get something else for that. But the bottom line is we have a good group of, I think, 4 state senators on the budget committee that are doing a terrific job. That whenever they see things that the governor is not doing correctly, they point that out, and they have offered alternatives. Steve Orho offered that alternative about recouping that money that we give as tax credits to people that pay New York City state income taxes. Well, you're working out of home. Being that you're working from home, then those taxes belong in New Jersey.
Right. Now, the Republicans are also going to court to challenge the mail voting scheme. Tell us about that.
Well, that's a challenge that's being done by both the state GOP and my good friend Senator Mike Tester is heading that up, along with Donald Trump. And they're in federal court. I believe they're in the New York federal court because they have jurisdiction over this. And, whatever the argument is, certainly it's constitutional. But also, by the time you get a ballot and by the time you mail it and by the time it's received, if it's received, opened up, how many people have seen that ballot? Too many people. That ballot is sacrosanct. That ballot should be between you and a machine. Now, we have people waiting 8 hours on a DMV line, but they can't go in and vote in a machine. Why is that?
Now, the plan now is to send a mail ballot to everybody who's
Correct.
registered to vote.
That's my understanding. And then everybody gets a ballot, everybody can mail it in, okay? Or you can take that ballot minimally. If we're not successful with that court challenge, my understanding is you could take that ballot and you could drop it off at a number of polling places. Certainly the county clerk, the Board of Elections should be able to drop it there if you want it to be secure. But if, my understanding is there's going to be security boxes within some polling places. I would hope at least one for every jurisdiction, every municipality. I don't know. They're sort of making this stuff up then as they go along.
Yeah, I had heard something about one in every jurisdiction, one actual physical polling place. Now, in some larger towns and cities, well, you take, like, for example, where Mike Testa is in Vineland, that is by area the largest city in New Jersey by area. There's an enormous amount of space there. You might have to travel for miles and miles to get to the one voting place in Vineland. But the more time that, first of all, what I see as the problems are the amount of time you have the ballot in your own possession, the number of people whose hands are on that ballot from beginning to end, and the journey that the ballot makes from when it leaves you to where it's supposed to end up. These are incalculable.
And people that are exposed. How is this ballot exposed? Who is it exposed to? And for instance, somebody may send in a ballot. I'm just surmising. I'm just a cynical guy. That's the way I grew up. Maybe that's why I got involved in politics. But you send a ballot. You choose not to vote for president. Somebody along the line takes a pen, and what do they do with that ballot? You got to check that off. You got to just, and they just put a check on it. Who's to know?
That one, yeah. Yeah. Of course, because you're only making a little, you're filling in a circle with a pen or pencil. You're filling in, if any people remember, like how if they ever took a test in school or like the SAT test, you're filling in a little circle to indicate your vote, as I recall.
There is no science except political science involved with some of these decisions. Not being able to eat in restaurants, indoors, picking winners and losers, not being able to vote in person. There's no scientific data. As a matter of fact, Fauci says you can vote in person. He doesn't see any reason why you should not. And why the silence? Why is this governor continuing to do what he's doing, except for one reason and one reason alone? Because he thinks it's advantageous to him and his party politically. And for that, I would hope one day him and his party pay the price.
And he basically said to people, if you don't like it, move somewhere else. Leave the state.
Well, he's used to moving. I mean, he's transplanted from Massachusetts. So I don't know. We don't have $75 entrees. We pay for $75 entrees in New Jersey. Sometimes a hamburger and fries and a Coke will do, and we're happy.
Well, he came here. He was ambassador to Germany. Okay, that was, I guess, his training for being governor of New Jersey, being ambassador to Germany, which we all know was a political appointment that probably came as a result of his influence and, of course, the contributions that he made to the Obama campaign. I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, this is the way things are done. Okay, but
I'm going to surprise you, Dan. I'm going to say something that will surprise you, maybe. From whatever conversations I've had with the governor, I don't think he's a bad man. okay?
Okay.
But I really question the type of governor that he has. And so far, frankly, I've not been impressed. I
Okay.
think frankly, his policies are hurting us. 7,000 dead souls. Nobody wants to tell us what happened. Everything is under a veil of darkness. You can't Oprah anything. We don't know what the science and data is. Well, people, if they did something, they have to own up to it. And so far, I haven't seen anybody own up to it. And I quite frankly think the number is a lot more than 7,000.
Well, what if I said to you, though, with this opposing the mail-in ballot, or certainly questioning the mail-in ballot and how it's done, challenging it in court, you're really trying to disenfranchise people from voting. You're trying to keep the vote down. How do you answer that?
That's what they've been complaining that we want to do, when all we want is a simple identification just to prove who you are. It's very simple. Somebody had told me one time they should let American Express handle voting. They can get a system, they can make it secure, they can give you either a special identification, a thumbprint that you can use, a PIN ID. But you ever get a call from American Express or Visa? We just want to check somebody used this card and you're not in state, or it's a charge that normally we don't see. So they could clean up this mess in a long time. Absentee ballots of people that physically can't do it, or for whatever personal reasons they might have, thoroughly agree with that. But to think en masse that people can't get up and spend 2 minutes at a polling booth, to do what is their constitutional privilege and responsibility, the right given to them by people dying, all over the world for the last 250 years, I'm not buying into that, Dan.
Absolutely not. Well, before we finish, Senator, let's talk a little bit about the Trump campaign. Did you watch the first night of the convention? What did you think?
I did, and I thought it was stark difference between the presentation that the Democrats had and the Republicans had. Democrats saw a veil of darkness. So what was it? Biden called it the season of despair. Reminded me of a lot of your listeners are probably too young to remember Jimmy Carter and the Great Malaise.
Oh, I do remember.
What did we see last night? We saw speeches that reinforced that shining city on the hill. We saw people with optimism, people thinking that glass is half full, not half empty. And most of those people, if not all of them last night, we see better days ahead for this country, as we should. That means better days for your children and your children's children. Not that funeral dirge that the Democrats presented last week.
And people that really love America, that love their country. I mean, that's what I got out of it, was a lot of love. I got a lot of love out of it. That people really love the country and want to do what's best for the country. All kinds of people that spoke last night from all different walks of life.
Funny how my Democrat friends on the other side of the aisle seem to bring out those flags and fireworks every 4 years. They may even occasionally say "under God" when they pledge allegiance. Not all the time, as you saw in this past Democrat convention. So, they show their patriotism in very strange ways. Didn't mention at all the strife that's going on, the riots, the looting that's going on, the disrespect and the fear-mongering that's going on in some of these urban cities that, quite frankly, have been ruled by Democrats for decades.
And a brazen law-breaking that's going on. Okay.
Well, if they're law-breaking, let's defund the police. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Now, I got to ask you as we conclude, Senator, what are you hearing from people on the ground? There's a lot of concern. Is the Trump base still strong? How are we doing with suburban moms, the suburban communities? I know you're up there in Morris County. What are you hearing on the ground?
Well, you can just look to the polls. 4 years ago, if you looked at the polls from July to Election Day, I think there was 226 polls. Of those 226 polls, only 13, I believe. I could be off a few, but that's basically the numbers. Only 13 showed Donald Trump winning. So if you listen to the polls, we'd be saying President Hillary Clinton right now. If you look at the enthusiasm, when you ask people how enthusiastic they are for their presidential candidates, I think this was a Gallup poll or a Washington Post poll, not exactly a conservative bastion. 24% say they're very enthusiastic if they are Democrats voting for Biden. Twice that many are just more enthusiastic voting for Trump, over 50% than they are. So I think 1/3 of the people, when they polled, said they would prefer a different presidential candidate, carrying the Democrat banner this year. So he has trouble. He has trouble exciting people. And this president, why should he not be elected? You look at those the battleground states now. It used to be the firewall for Democrats, the Midwestern states. Those are the areas that he had promised that he would bring manufacturing back to. He did. He promised he was going to decrease unemployment and increase employment. He did. So all the promises that he did, including those lousy trade deals, getting rid of them and getting better trade deals, he did. So check off all those boxes. Why would anybody in those states, Stan, anybody who voted for Donald Trump 4 years ago, not vote for him again this time around, and then some? So I think more than anything else, the promises that this president made, he has made those promises. So if you're going to judge him on what he said and what he did.
So you're feeling pretty good about this whole thing going into it, and I know you'll be watching the convention. You're a delegate, right? You are a delegate, or alternate, or what?
Well, we were delegates until we got undelegatized. And then what happened because of COVID, it was all done by proxy. So we had sworn affidavits that we were giving our votes to the president. And he was nominated last night. He got the necessary votes last night. I'm very proud. But I'm very proud that I was with him almost since the very, very beginning.
Yes, and we'll all be watching in the nights ahead. And Senator, thank you for taking the time with us today. It's always a pleasure. I got to tell those who are watching that Senator Pennacchio reached out to me on Facebook like 4 years ago. It's something that I was inquiring about, and just totally out of the blue. I never met you. I didn't know you. And we became social media friends. And folks, this is one of New Jersey's true public servants and treasures. So I'm very, very grateful, Senator, that you're there. And I hope you continue the good fight. So thank you so much.
And you as well, Dan. Thank you very much.
Okay, take care.
Stay
Bye.
safe.